Welcome to another episode of the MEGIN Spotlight series. Today we are delighted to have Professor Nakasato as our guest. He is the chair of the Epileptology Department at Tohoku University in Japan. Hi, Professor Nakasato. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very happy for this opportunity.
You've been active in the MEG field for a long time. We're really interested to find out what started your interest in MEG 30 plus years ago, and how has its utilization evolved in your epileptology clinical and research career?
Yeah, it was mid-1980s. I attended an annual conference of Japan Epilepsy Society, but I was bored with the plenary sessions. So I made a side trip to a bookstore and found a book entitled Epilepsy 100 Elementary Principles, written by Dr. Roger Porter, a famous epileptologist in the NIH. In the very final chapter 100, Dr. Porter wrote about MEG. I was a neurosurgical resident at the time, interested in epilepsy surgery, and good at math and physics, but I didn't like biology, chemistry, or any other wet lab stuff. The term superconducting quantum interference device, we call it the SQUID, really fascinated me. That's why I studied MEG research. It was not easy to start completely new research as a young, poor, and busy neurosurgical resident like me during that time. I only had a kind of a reckless enthusiasm. I knocked at the door of Professor Taichiro Otsuka. He's a chair of the Department of Low Temperature Physics at Tohoku University. He introduced me to the biomagnetometry research group at the National Electrotechnical Laboratory, Tsukuba Science City, Japan, where I studied my first MEG research using a homemade single-channel SQUID system. Can you imagine applying a single-channel system for clinical MEG? We have to measure here, here, here. It takes a year, you know. Then I moved to UCLA in 1989 to learn epileptology and clinical MEG. But at that time, also, we have to use only 7-channel system. But good supervision of Professor William Sutherland, I really appreciate him. Finally, in 1993, I was able to introduce a helmet-shaped MEG system into my home hospital in Sendai, Japan. That was 8 years after the bookstore story. With the introduction of a helmet-shaped whole-head MEG system, my long-awaited dream had finally become a reality.
What an incredible journey for you. Also, it must have been gratifying to know you were able to bring technology back to Japan, and that it was in those days still very new and unknown. So now that MEG has been much more established in Japan, as the department chairperson for over 10 years, how is MEG incorporated into the operational flow of the epileptology department? So how is MEG used in conjunction with other modalities, and why is that vital for you and the patient?
Yes, okay. Let's talk about the application of MEG for epilepsy. That is my specialty. We epileptologists say no single method alone. Maybe the careful history taking by experienced epileptologists is probably the most important method. Other diagnostic tools are not always perfect or sometimes not essential. There are many non-invasive but useful tools for clinical decision-making for epilepsy, such as electroencephalography, outpatient basis, and long-term video EEG monitoring, MRI, FDG PET scan, and MEG. For patients with medically intractable epilepsy, we have to choose surgical option using sometimes only one supporting data set among one of these modalities. Therefore, I'm not going to say MEG is perfect, but I'm sure that MEG sometimes gives us convincing data set for surgery, even when none of the others show positive findings.
So let's say in a case where MEG has been able to provide convincing data set for surgery when other modalities may have not done so, how do you describe MEG to your epilepsy patients and how an MEG scan might benefit their epilepsy care plan? You know, how early in a patient's care plan may that be recommended to have an MEG scan?
Yeah, it's easy. To my patient with epilepsy, I explained that number one, MEG is often more sensitive than EEG to explore epileptogenic activity. Number two, MEG has higher accuracy to localize the source of epileptogenic activity. And then number three, MEG can also localize eloquent area, which is important brain areas such as hand sensory motor activity, auditory activity, visual activity, and then language areas, which is very important for the final surgical planning. Patients should definitely undergo MEG examination when surgical treatment is considered. Patients may be put forward for MEG study when other modalities show negative results even before medical treatment of epilepsy. MEG is also a good study option when the first surgery has failed for seizure control.
That's interesting. Can you give us some examples of epilepsy cases you've been involved with where the use of MEG has allowed for improved clinical outcomes?
Sure, I can show you using my slide. Clinical application of MEG for spike detection and then localizations. First study we published in 2003, that's blinded the comparison of EEG and MEG. Our data set was blindly presented to one neurologist. He checks EEG spikes only, while the other neurologists check MEG spike only. So that, and then we put a flag, oh, here's a spike, independently in EEG and MEG. Some patients shows EEG spikes only and without concurrent MEG spikes. And then others are only MEG spikes while the EEG did not. Or sometimes the concurrent EEG and MEG spikes. And then this is a bar graph. Each vertical bar represents one patient. And the black area is the percentage of unique MEG spikes, a lot of MEG spikes, unique MEG spikes, while the white bar indicates unique EEG spikes. And gray area is common EEG and MEG spikes. As you can see here, MEG picks up a lot of unique MEG spikes without concurrent EEG spikes. But in the actual clinical analysis, we combine EEG and MEG together so that concurrent or common EEG, MEG spikes a lot. But this graph clearly shows that the higher sensitivity of MEG usually than EEG. Here's a single case of a 35 years old female. She represents left foot seizures, daily seizures, 10 times or 20 times, painful left leg seizures. The first MRI scan didn't show any abnormality, but later we finally they found a very small, tiny abnormal area with the aid of MEG spike mapping, because the spike mapping shows clearly the foot motor area, and then we came back to MRI scan, and then finally we noticed, oh, here's a small lesion. And we implanted the subdural electrodes, which is brain surface electrodes. Also, we penetrated some depth electrodes into the brain. And then we finally got very localized spike area that is epileptogenic area. And then we did the resection. This is the MRI scan after surgery. And then this white spot, it's a fingertip size of resection, maybe 7 millimeter and 7 millimeter. And after this surgery, patient became seizure-free and no motor deficit. This is a kind of the beauty of MEG. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit about the research you conduct using MEG2. Are you able to share how MEG has helped to facilitate epilepsy research conducted by your department?
Yeah, well, my research is also oriented for clinical application of MEG. Like here I listed up my publication list of somatosensory evoked magnetic field. Usually we use median nerve for wrist, hand area, or gingiva, or tongue, or lip, or tibial nerve, which is the foot or leg, and the finger digits, thumb, index, 5 fingers, and then even penis are also sacral surfaces. We can localize all the somatosensory area of the human body non-invasively and then precisely. Here's our recent publication about awake state specific suppression of primary somatosensory evoked response correlated with duration of temporal lobe epilepsy. You know, the somatosensory area is around here, but the temporal lobe is far from the primary somatosensory area. But the disease of temporal lobe epilepsy affects the remote somatosensory area. And it happens only in the awake conditions, but not in the sleep conditions. This waveform, stacked waveform indicates that control case and then temporal lobe epilepsy cases. You see the in TLE patient, M1, that is a primary somatosensory evoked field. The amplitude is smaller than the control cases, but it's only in the awake condition, but not in the sleep. And this graph indicates that M1 latency, signal latency is no difference between the patients and then control groups, whereas the signal moment, that it's the power, is smaller in temporal lobe epilepsy cases during sleep time only. Very interestingly, this graph indicates the horizontal axis is the duration of temporal lobe epilepsy, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then the vertical axis indicates the ECD moment. And here's the gray bar indicates average of normal controls. Here you can see that if the disease duration is very short, ECD moment is almost normal. But in the linear style, the somatosensory M1 moment is getting smaller, smaller, smaller according to the duration of temporal lobe epilepsy. We do not know exactly why, but this type of a very sophisticated analysis can be achieved by our excellent MEG, you know. Here's also another list of our research about auditory function, visual function, gustatory function, motion-related function, and then language-related area using MEG. So basically, we can map out whatever you want if it's a brain surface function, you know, which is also important for the surgical planning of epilepsy. Thank you.
Wow. We would certainly like to share some of those studies with our audience, if that's okay with you. So you've been dedicated to the field for 30 years. Do you feel there should be more education in medical school about MEG as a neuroimaging modality, and to both drive interest and utilization of MEG once young professionals become qualified?
Yeah, I really want to do so, but unfortunately not right now. We say core curriculum. Core curriculum is strictly defined for all the medical students in Japan. But unfortunately, there are only a few medical schools or university hospitals that have MEG systems, so that in core curriculum, there's no description about MEG. Well, all of the epilepsy centers in this world can be divided into two types: those who have MEG or not. Maybe all the epileptologists can be divided into two: those who know MEG or not. For similar, yeah, for similar reasons, MEG has not yet been listed as an essential item to run or on the board certification of epileptologists, as well as of clinical neurophysiologists in Japan, and maybe in the other countries. But I'm pretty sure that all the epilepsy centers or major neurosurgical centers will or should introduce MEG for clinical routine tools in the near future. Well, meantime, we MEG clinicians should analyze our data and publish, and maybe publish. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is certainly something Megan would like to change as well, so that MEG becomes a standard of care in the healthcare industry. But we all need to work together to achieve this goal, I would think. So thank you very much, Professor Nakasato, for your time today. This has been extremely insightful and discussion on how you are utilizing MEG at an epileptology department at Tohoku University. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you very much. I hope your contribution to our society. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.